If you remember the movie Wish, it came out at the end of the year last year, and it didn't do very well at all. It bombed at the box office. It lost money. And now what's happening is the movie is coming out on Disney Plus, and Disney is doing the thing that they always do when one of these movies doesn't do well and then comes out at the box office afterwards, which is they claim that everyone's watching it and that it's doing really, really good numbers. I'm not here to argue about whether that's true. I fully believe that a lot of people will tune into something like this to see it at home. My problem with this is that it ends up becoming like a weird type of either propaganda to get Disney Plus, or it's blatantly ignoring the fact that as a company, Disney isn't doing their job in making movies that actually get people out to the theaters, right? So I think back to all of the sequels that they used to make for Disney movies that never went, like Simba's Pride,
right?
Like Lion King 2, they did the sequels to Aladdin and stuff like that, and none of those were ever released in theaters. And it feels like so much of it now is that most of these movies, they don't feel like they were actually made to be seen in the theater. It feels like it's just content, and that's where I think of things are differently now. A lot of people don't think of it as entertainment; they just think of it as content to dump somewhere and then go watch at your leisure.
Yeah.
They did this. So they were doing this with the Marvels as well. They were talking about how when the Marvels came out on streaming, it was doing all of these numbers and everyone's like, oh, it's actually really good. The problem is you have to find a way to help. We can argue about whether the movie's good or not. That's not the point. Mm-hmm. I thought it was meh. I didn't like it, right? But that doesn't mean you're not going to like it, but Disney's not doing its job if they're not finding a way to get you excited enough to go see it in the theaters.
Right. I totally agree with you. I think that is a component of it all. The other part of this is just looking at this headline. When they say Wish has 13.2 million views on Disney in 5 days, maybe this is deeply cynical, but views doesn't mean people actually liked it. Does views mean that like it auto played after something because Disney set it up to, and 13.2 million people didn't hit the stop button in time?
Correct.
Or
Also,
slept through it because streaming keeps going. You know what I mean? Like I feel badly, you know, sometimes you want to fight off being too cynical about everything, but in this case, I feel like you have to be skeptical of the platform that says, well, it turns out when it was on a platform that we had complete control of and people pay for, it did really well. Like, but you have the ability to influence those numbers in a way that makes me think that it's inflated.
And one of the things about movies being as expensive as they are to see now is that I feel like you're actually more likely to get a strong audience score because the barrier to entry is so high that you're not going to go see something unless you're pretty sure that you're going to like it anyways. And unless you have the wool completely pulled over your eyes, the rug completely pulled out from under you, I feel like audience scores stay pretty above average for, or like 70s and 80s. I guess that's about average, right? I feel like most movies these days that you're not seeing a lot of 40s for movies like this. You're seeing a lot of, and this one was low. I think it was in the 60s. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong there. But the point is like for a lot of movies, when I go see it, I say the audience score is going to be average to a little bit above average. The critic score is going to be reflective of more of an average number because it costs so damn much to go to the theater anyways. The people who are going to take the time to go review it online are probably going to have a stronger feeling about it. And when it comes to stuff like this, all it says to me is that you made something that people weren't willing to pay more than $8 a month for, along with everything else they're selling. It costs a lot to go to a theater. You're paying hundreds of dollars if you're going with multiple people.
You're investing your life savings in this experience.
Yeah, like if you're paying $17 a month so that you can watch everything on Disney Plus, saying that somebody watched this movie while they were also allowed to watch everything else is on there isn't really a compliment to me. But they keep doing this as if it's going to artificially inflate the image behind the movie. Either, I don't know if it's because they want to help this movie get a sequel or make another version of it.
I think it's like justifying making the movie to their boomer shareholders or their boomer board, right?
Yeah.
Like they're like, no, but look, it actually did get the views, and you're unable to distinguish the difference between like actually performing well versus, you know, being auto played or getting some sort of like workaround number.
So this movie, I think it cost like $175 to $200 million before the marketing, and it only made like $254 million at the box office, which is something they have to split 50-50 with the theaters. So it lost at least $100 million.
So that,
right?
like, again, so you would have to say to someone, whoever ultimately makes the decision, be like, how are we spending the money? Like, no, it was worth doing.
Yeah. And I feel like another problem is that for a long time, they were releasing their Disney Plus, or I'm sorry, their Disney animated movies in theaters, and they were releasing their Pixar movies on streaming. So what's happened is they're
It seems like the opposite of what you should do. I feel like Pixar movies are designed to be watched in surround sound. Yeah.
So like it feels like in general, they're training their audience to stay home, but that's a shrinking market cap. What I've seen for the most part with most streaming services is they've reached their edges, right? You're not going to have these big like growths in subscribers that you were having during COVID when everyone was investing in streaming because they didn't have anywhere to go and they had to be stuck at home. They've reached their general cap for where they're going to sit.
It's almost like they need to, like, when are they going to come outright and be like, look, we're not even sure it's worth us releasing in the theaters by like you're saying during COVID when people realized they had to stay at home, they spent money differently. Like they bought the Peloton bikes. Pelotons crashed afterwards when gyms reopened.
About that, yeah.
Right. So like what if Disney, maybe it's too public of a breakup to make because they want to stay in good graces with big theater.
Well,
hold on. Yeah. Sorry, I have this whole theory now and it's bubbling in my brain. Like what if Disney was like, look, we don't actually need you to go to the theater, and in fact we're going to start sending 1,000 people. We're going to start, when you buy our Disney Plus, we're going to send you special speakers to put in your living room to create that surround sound event. Like, what if they just started really directly competing and saying, we can enhance your experience at home and it's not worth us releasing in theaters, so we're just going to double down at the at-home streaming platform. Like, at what point will that be how they move the business along? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, it feels like that would be the logical conclusion for a lot of people because people aren't coming out to the theaters unless it's something they really, really want to see. And the problem is they use excuses. They use COVID as an excuse. Like, they're pretty much still using COVID as an excuse, talking about how numbers never returned to pre-pandemic numbers, despite the fact that movies like Spider-Man No Way Home and Top Gun Maverick proved that if people really want to see something, they will go see it.
And I think, and this is me commenting anthropologically on something I am not, so I feel like you tell me, but people who love the theater experience, people who believe in the experience of like getting your popcorn and going and like the whole thing, they are the ones that Disney is sort of on the fence about, right? Whereas generally someone who likes going to theater will still stream movies, whereas like I never go to the movies. I will maybe stream stuff. So at some point they're going to have to start trying to court the theater lover to win them over to the streaming experience if they're going to start exclusively releasing movies they want to do well on streaming.
Yeah, and that's the problem, though. This was a theater release, and it just didn't make the money that they wanted to. And it's very hard to justify.
Is it a kids' movie? I don't.
Yeah, it is. It is.
So the other part is like, are children available? Like, when do children go to the movies? You know what I'm saying? You either have to really win their parents to buy them tickets, or you have to say children's movies are more likely to be streamed for children at home.
Yeah. The thing is, like, for a price tag of $200 million, probably closer to $300 million or more after marketing, you have to ask, how do we make our money back? Because you're not making it.
Who sets these budgets?
You're not making it back by getting all of the same people who are already paying for Disney Plus to just watch it on Disney Plus. You have to increase your revenue in other places. And that's a problem when you're making stuff that isn't bringing people to the theaters.
Right.
And the same thing happened with Captain Marvel. It bombed at the box office, and then by the time it came out on streaming, people were like, oh, this movie isn't that bad. So you've destroyed your brand by diluting all your companies. There's no goodwill left with Marvel. Lucasfilm doesn't have any goodwill left because Indiana Jones 5 bombed at the box office, and people are generally feeling very meh about all of it. Well, you can't get people to the theater when there's no goodwill.
Is there a marketing research firm that is studying this? Like, what is the difference between, like, what gets someone to the theater? They just, like, with the Marvel event, like the multiverse type superhero movies, they're invested in the characters theoretically, right? They want to see it, but then like everybody else, why would someone opt to watch something in the theater versus stream it at home? Like, what I want to know, there has to be like data that could apply to this.
Like the movie we were talking about earlier, there's some interesting examples of movies that very clearly should have gone to streaming that get theater releases that don't do very well. But there's also movies like Five Nights at Freddy's, which was released both on Peacock and in theaters in the same day and made like $100 million, made a lot of money in its opening weekend and did really, really well. And then it's like, well, who is this market? This is for gamers, and it's for a younger demographic that's untapped right now, and it did very, very well. As far as like actual like research studies on this stuff, I don't know what it is, and I think that Disney for the most part is too conceited to actually admit that they need to change their course of action anyways.
Yeah.
And I look at this stuff and all I think about is like, it's this weird Disney Plus propaganda where they're like, come to our platform. I'm like, well, but you need them to go to the theaters first if you actually want these movies to justify their existence by making their money back.
Yeah.
So
I just can't imagine like the Disney executives being like, you know, it's a great idea. Let's invest $200 million in this. And then the other one's like, no, $300 million.
Yeah. And those budgets have only gone up. And a lot of it.
In these economic times, you don't think any of them are like, look, maybe we'll just start on a small project, guys, and see how it goes.
Was there not at least one like non-coke snorting executive who's just like, in this economy?
I do remember this was a long time ago, but one time I was like, it's a money laundering scheme. They're just kicking it all the way up to see what happens.
Yep, a lot of people think that that's absolutely true. I think for
it
the
has
most
to be
part,
true, yeah?
that for most of these things, it's like no matter what happens, and I talk about this a lot. It's like it never feels like anything changes. No matter how many flops come through, it doesn't feel like they ever make any changes. But Disney did. So this year they said we're going to make less movies. And we're going to focus on quality. Now, nobody actually believes that they're going to focus on qualities, but if we're talking about making less movies, I'm all for it.
Yeah, fewer movies for sure.
Fewer movies and focus on making those better. I just don't have any faith that Disney will actually do the work to try and make the movies better.
Which also means if they're not doing the work to do that, then they are still making money, right? Like Disney hasn't posted a loss yet, so whatever decisions they're making.
Disney is like their stock took a hit, and their
stock took a hit, but they're not like about to declare bankruptcy.
But they lost billions this year, and this was the 2023 was the first year in like 15 years where they didn't win the box office, where Universal was the #1 earner at the box office in 2023, not Disney. So. These were some of the takes where it says, finally watched Disney's Wish. It was really bad. I kept waiting for them to tell the villain was lying about his backstory, but he was just a traumatized dude who built an entire city dedicated to protecting people who got imprisoned for no reason. Yes, the villain was really, really bad. Like their characterization of the villain was really, really bad.
What do you mean? Like he just wasn't villainy enough, or he was a really bad guy?
He was literally misunderstood. And when he would make his arguments for why he can't grant everyone's wish, every sane person's like, that makes perfect sense. But then it just turned people off. It was stupid. I just think it's interesting because all of these companies, every day I read articles from a different site, a different shill website that says, this movie dropped on streaming and is like the #1 movie in the world. I'm like, and nobody cared. Like right now, like when they say
that's why I doubt the data. How can it be the #1 movie and also no one cares about it?
What was the number? It was like 15.3 million. There are episodes of television shows like 5 to 10 years ago on network television that got that in one night.
Yeah.
And that's with advertising to make money on.
Yeah. But people were concentrated then, right? Like several decades ago, you weren't competing with every other thing, right?
Well, the problem is like back then, like now when they put these on there, a lot of them have an ad tier, but not everyone's watching the ad tier. A lot of them are still watching it. You know, they've paid the full price for Disney Plus. They're not going to have ads showing on it. Wouldn't it be better to put it on a television network where they can then play the movie abridged and you can get 2 hours worth of ad revenue out of something like this? But Disney doesn't want to work with companies outside of Disney. And I feel like if they were actually to license this stuff out, they could actually make some of their money back, but they're not going to do that. Thanks for watching. Listen to full episodes of Pop Culture Crisis on Spotify.
Keep up with us on social media and make sure you subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss the show. Bye, guys.